Welcome to Worship Leading for Small Group Leaders. During this time, we're going to try and give you some tips and information that may help you as you lead people in your small group in worship to God. The first question we have to ask is, how do we lead people to worship God? Well, the answer is pretty simple. Everyone lives a lifestyle of worship. It comes very naturally. Some worship money, success, other people, or even pleasure. They worship whatever they desire. All a worship leader has to do is lead people to Jesus, and they will point their worship to Him. So what is worship? Worship defined as this. Worship is love expressed. What we are trying to do is get people to express their love to the God that made them. That's what a worship leader does. So how do we define success in worship leading? This way, God's pleasure in our worship. We want to lead people to the God that made them so that they can sense His presence in a way that will change their life and they will respond to Him in worship. So how do we actually lead worship? Well, in Deuteronomy 10:8, it shows us that there were three responsibilities of what the Old Testament calls a Levitical priest, or what we may call a worship leader today. It says this, "At that time, the Lord set apart the tribe of Levi to first carry the presence of God." That means to live worship. Next, He called them to minister to the Lord, which means to express worship. Lastly, He called them to bless the people, which means to lead worship, as they still do today. So those are the three things that we do when we lead worship. So now that you're leading worship at your small group, what's your job? Well, 1 Chronicles tells us there were three different people with three different jobs. The first person, it was their job to lead worship. This includes the three responsibilities of a Levitical priest we just talked to you about. The second person was someone who led the singing. This means they sing out loud and they tell people when they're supposed to sing and when not to. The last person was someone who leads the music. They would play an instrument or tell other people when they are supposed to play. Now, you may be a small group worship leader and say, I don't sing or I don't play an instrument, but you have a piano player or guitar player that shows up at your group, or you have someone who sings really well and they come to your group. Let them lead the singing and let them lead the music, and you concentrate on the first one, which is leading worship, telling people who God is and having them express their love back to Him. Or if you don't have an instrumentalist or singers in your group, then you can use our Gateway Group's Small Group Director app, which will help you with on-screen lyrics and backing tracks that will do that second and third job for you. No matter what, just remember, worship leading is the most important thing that we can do when we get people together. We could even lead worship without music, but you need to concentrate on God and His goodness, and people will respond to Him. So now we're leading worship. What does the Bible say about worshiping God? How do we do it? How do we worship? Well, in Psalm 100 verse 4, it gives us a type of worship roadmap to help. First, we start with thanksgiving. We start by thanking the Lord for what He has done for us. And we want to make sure that people engage right from the start, help them to remember how good God is so they can respond. Next, we move on to praise, which is to help people remember why God deserves our worship. And that is the cross. We have been saved by Him. Then we can get them to sing and clap and shout about it. Then finally, we move to intimate worship with our Savior. When we worship, once they have remembered why God deserves their time, attention, and worship, we push this world aside. We get out of the way and let them worship Him deeply. Then, as the worship leader, you make sure that you enter in too. Make sure that you give exemplary worship, showing them that God deserves their time. God deserves their love. Set an example. Don't just lead worship, be a lead worshiper, and you will have an encounter with God.